So let's be clear. Saul's encounter in the book of Acts chapter 9, Saul's encounter with God was a very personal encounter. And because it was a very personal encounter, you can't say that everybody that needs to know what the plan of God is for their lives must have this encounter or have such a dramatic encounter with God. We accept that. But there are some things that happened to Saul that we can receive for ourselves as a principle. And certainly the principle that the Apostle Paul, who is Saul later on, writes about a lot, especially in the book of Corinthians, in the book of Ephesians, in different places. He talks about the light of God, the love of God, the glory of God, and the darkness that is in the world. And our fight is against principalities and rulers and those things that are not obvious to the human person. I want to read to you what happens to Saul in the moments after he encounters this brilliant light. But I do want to start with the Passion Translation of the encounter itself. The Passion Translation says this: "Who are you?" Saul says to Jesus, "Who are you, Lord?" "And I am Jesus the victorious." He announces himself in the Passion Translation, "I am Jesus the victorious, the one you are persecuting. Now get up and go into the city where you will be told what you are to do." So every time God is going to meet with you like this, He's going to tell you what to do. Verse 9, "For 3 days he didn't eat or drink and couldn't see a thing." He couldn't see a thing. He was completely blind. Well, I think that's an amazing thing. And I've shared with you in the previous session about blindness. Living in Damascus, verse 10, living in Damascus was a believer named Ananias. The Lord spoke to him in a vision, calling his name, Ananias. "Yes, Lord," Ananias answered. Well, here's a difference between the vision that Ananias had and the vision that Saul had. Saul was ambitious, and he was following a plan that was his plan without acknowledging the plan of Yahweh or God in his life. In this occasion, Ananias already knew God. So when God came to speak to him, he didn't say, "Who are you, Lord?" He immediately said, "Yes, Lord." It's a big difference in your relationship with God. That if you, instead of when God says to you and calls your name, you don't say, "Who are you? What am I supposed to do?" You just say, "Yes, Lord." The Lord said, "Go at once to the street called Abundance." Please note what this vision is all about. This is not a long-term vision, and we'll talk about that in future sessions. There are things that the Lord will tell you about a long-term plan, and there's things that God can tell you that must be obeyed immediately. And so he says, "Go at once to the street called Abundance and look for a man from Tarsus named Saul. You will find him at Judah's house, where, while he was praying, he saw in a supernatural vision a man named Ananias coming to lay hands upon him to restore his sight." Now you can see that God is telling Ananias, "I have showed him a vision that you will be coming to him and you will be laying hands on him so that he can receive his sight." So then it's very clear that what God did to blind him was so that he could see the visions that God had for him rather than the visions that he had planned for his own life. Watch the conversation that Ananias has with the Lord. "But Lord," Ananias replied, "many have told me about his terrible persecution of those in Jerusalem who are devoted to you. In fact, the high priest has authorized him to seize and imprison all those in Damascus who call on your name." The Lord Yahweh answered him, or Jehovah answered him, "Arise and go." In other words, go now. "I have chosen this man to be my special messenger. He will be brought before kings, before many nations, and before the Jewish people to give them the revelation of who I am. And I will show him how much he is destined to suffer because of his passion for me." Well, God is deciding He's going to share some of what Paul's going to go through, he's showing him, I'm giving this information to Paul. I'm not showing you, Ananias, all the details, but I am telling you that this is a special messenger and he's going to suffer many things, but I need you to go immediately and go lay hands on him, and so that his long-term vision can be activated by your short-term obedience to the plan. When we come back and talk about this the next time, we're going to talk about your short-term obedience and the long-term plans that God has for his people.